Hey folks, coming up in 9-10 minutes time. Just queuing up my tabs and all that, stories. Pulling my guest in, and hey, look at that, we got old Piers in the green room too. Oh, hold on, Piers. Can you hear me, mate? Oh, he's probably, I don't know, supping his dinner. Right, anyway, so should be a fun show. Yeah, it should be an interesting show, actually. We got Gawain Towler coming on to talk about the FARAGE effect. So give us a few minutes, folks. If you're watching an archive version, yep, you might want to fast forward about 9 minutes to the top of the show. Let's have a good one. It's all copyright free, Facebook. Yeah. Oh, no. That sounds like a Winlock commercial. Can't be listening to that. 4 minutes, people.
Hear me?
Hey, Piers. Hello, mate. God bless you. All right.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, good, man. Good. That's absolutely dreadful. Piers, did that rock your boat, mate?
It was a bit intermittent. It was cutting it.
Was it?
Cutting
Really?
in and out.
I think that might be the recording, actually.
When I close my eyes before going into universe, I think about the moment we were hoping wouldn't end, because I never knew it was my imagination. I never wanted to say what I said, I just wanted an explanation.
Right. This had better be good, hadn't it?
Right now. Cutting in and out.
Hey, does that sound slightly better, does it?
Oh, it's worse.
Ah, good. All right. Oh, blimey. Hold on. 1 minute. 1 minute, people. Wait. All right. Ta-da. Hey, Gawain. Gawain.
What?
Hello, sir. Okay. 30 seconds.
Yeah, the whole thing collapsed on me.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling. I know that feeling
I
well.
was there. It just died about 6 minutes ago, so I've had to turn the whole bloody thing off and start it again.
No problem. We're streaming, by the way. We're streaming. Just so you know. Old Piers is here too. Piers has popped in. He does on Tuesdays sometimes. 20 seconds. Right. Okay. All right. That's enough of that. That's enough of that. Hey, folks. Good evening, good people. Welcome to the Daily Brexit. Holding democracy to account, fighting for self-determination, and exposing plutocracy. I'm Olly Connelly. Thanks for turning up. And now, the FARAGE effect. What does the Brexit Party mean for the Brexit parties? And what does that mean for Brexit? UKIP's former head of press, Gawain Towler, analyses events here with me and with Piers, old Piers Garnham. Taking your calls on Discord at gov.ly/rant from the bottom of the hour from 7:30, and we'll see you in the comments. Please help the show. paypal.me/Brexit. If you can afford it, please buy us a beer. Cheers. And hey, share the thing, whatever you do on, I don't know, Facebook, YouTube, all that. Thank you. The idea, Gawain, is this is kind of supposed to be a bit like the Commons.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Right. Okay. Let's, without further ado, let's get into a bit of news. What's going on today, and have a look. And on YouTube, you should have video today as well. So I certainly hope so. And you should be able to see what I can see. Well, I say that. I say that. I'm not sure that I can see my media panel myself. Oh, hold on a sec. Let me just sort this out.
I can't say a great deal.
Technical stuff. Where is it? There we go. No, that's not it. Oh, blimey. Okay, I don't know that you will be able to see the news. Let me just bear with me. Gawain, what have you been doing today?
What have I been doing?
Who have you been plotting with, sir?
Breakfast?
Yep. Yes.
Quite a lot of breakfast. Bawling out my son. The lack of homework. A whole bunch of bits and pieces to do with a variety of organisations and
I thought
things.
You were going to tell us that you were, I don't know, doing something with the Brexit Party or something. We'll come on to that. I do seem to have some news to be able to show you on the screen now. So we'll go through this. And Gawain, please do interrupt me and tell me what you think of these stories. Express is really the top story today, I guess, is an Ireland... Oh, no, hold on a sec, that's not the one. The top one is Theresa May is ruling out scrapping a backstop ahead of the showdown talks in Brussels, which I think are going on Thursday now. She's
back to see Juncker on Thursday for a stopgap backstop meeting, and it doesn't seem she's going again, having told everybody she's not going to do what she needs to do, which yet again will hand the advantage in any further negotiations to our friends on the continent. She's tying herself in knots and handing herself over like some sort of trussed vegetable for a barbecue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All of my tabs just closed on me. Everything. All of my tabs just closed on me. Unbelievable. Yeah, we do get some technical problems on this show. It is a nightmare, isn't it? I mean, the bottom line, though, is she's a Remainer. She doesn't want Brexit at all, no?
And we now have evidence of what most of us have known for a long time, is that you have the two main parties. You have a Leave party led by a Remainer, and you've got a Remain party led by a Leaver.
Yes, it is. But the real, so far as Brexit's concerned, though, surely in the Labour Party, the real danger are the Blairites, the Starmers of this world.
No, I don't think so. And you've got so many different power bases within the Labour Party that, I mean, it's more like the national grid than it is like a political party. There doesn't seem to be. I mean, they have, over the last 2 years, I think the technical and political description is masterly confusion. By promising nothing and promising everything, they're trying to keep as many of their 500,000 members on board.
Yes.
Now, see the practical why they do this. Practically, it makes perfect sense as in politics to not annoy your support base. However, in the end, decisions have to be made, and positions have to be taken because, yes, it's politics. And whilst the Labour Party is not in power, it doesn't have to make decisions in the same way that the government does. It does to a certain extent. If the government madly is floating an idea of an early general election, then Labour are going to have a manifesto commitment. And they've had, whatever commitment they make, they can point to something they've said in the last 6 months that backs it, from a hard, clean Brexit through to staying in the EU without so much as a by your leave. At every point, they have senior figures who've presented that idea. So the electorate is none the wiser, which is one of the reasons, I suspect, that despite the most ham-fisted government in living memory, they're still behind in the polls.
Whilst we're on this topic, it does seem, the division is incredible within that party. Starmer, according to Guido tonight, Starmer abandons Labour's manifesto pledge to end free movement. This is him talking a bit about that.
A customs union and single market alignment are, in Labour's view, the only way to secure the economy. They're also the only way to ensure we don't have a hard border in Northern Ireland.
But this is another iteration of the Keir Starmer journey.
Okay, you know what? I've had enough of that already, but we'll read the top paragraph. Keir Starmer has softened Labour's Brexit position again, telling Newsnight last night that Labour now backed both a customs union and single market alignment. He initially says he doesn't see it as taking Corbyn on a journey towards Norway Plus, before going on to say that the UK would have to consider allowing the free movement of workers under a Norway Plus plan, a big departure from Labour's manifesto, which explicitly states freedom of movement will end when we leave the European Union. So apart from the fact that they seem to be backtracking entirely on their manifesto pledge, okay, they didn't make government, but nonetheless, they had a manifesto pledge, Dwayne, to honour the result of the referendum, and off the back of that, now they're going in completely the opposite direction. And
well, some of them are.
Go on. Well, yeah. You say that they're trying to appease. You say they're trying to appease their grassroots, if you like, but
again,
are they?
Because there is no clear direction from the top. Everybody feels they have the right to prosecute their own perspective and make that claim that that's official Labour policy. The problem is yesterday we have hard evidence that Mr. Corbyn's position on Europe is very, very different. In fact, he warned the Irish about how their referendum would be overturned. Yes. And his own people are doing that today to us. So this is part of this constant. They say one thing, they say another. They say one, and in order to keep their ramshackle alliance in one piece. What is the Labour policy? No idea.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? So this is the opposition.
Today's policy from Starmer is one thing. On the weekend, on I think you had Barry Gardiner saying completely the opposite.
Yeah.
What is it? We don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
And they like it that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, that's the opposition. Coming on to the government today, and I guess this is the big story. Breitbart's coverage of it. May refuses to scrap contentious Irish backstop. So let's just get into the guts of this a little bit, because obviously this is quite important, particularly off the back of what David Trimble said last night. We'll come on to that as well. Prime Minister Theresa May has ruled out removing the Irish backstop from the withdrawal agreement, claiming the insurance policy prevents a hard border. Mrs. May described her commitment to maintaining the Good Friday Agreement and avoiding a hard border as unshakable in a speech to business leaders in Belfast on Tuesday, telling media, "I'm not proposing to persuade people to accept a deal that does not contain that insurance policy for the future. What Parliament has said," she continued, "is that they believe there should be changes made to the backstop, which the Prime Minister said would prevent a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland." So what is your take on what she is doing with this, Gawain? I mean, it just seems to me the entire backstop thing is an absolute red herring anyway.
Well, precisely. It's unnecessary. And you had the Irish Europe Minister only a couple of days ago saying that they're starting to realise that there's going to have to be some sort of bilateral discussion Then you've got the Irish Prime Minister saying that troops will have to be put on the border. When being asked whose troops, the answer there came none, because we're not going to be putting any troops on the border. The Irish have only got Boy Scouts with scalpels. What are they going to do? Send German troops on the border? I doubt it. So nobody's going to build this wall. Nobody's going to build a hard border. Nobody wants a hard border. There's no need for a hard border. Plenty of trade experts tell us that the technical solutions are there, even at Irish level and at the UK level and at other levels. It is, as you say, a red herring. There is no need for it. However, you've got to remember, from what we understand and what we learn, that the whole backstop thing was actually proposed by the UK back in the day. That our friends on the continent, the people we were supposed to be negotiating with, couldn't believe their luck.
Yes,
absolutely. It tied us in knots. The whole point of the Irish backstop is to keep Britain in the single market and the customs union. And that is certainly not what people voted for.
No.
Which is why I suspect Labour may regret pushing that direction. But because the whole purpose of that is to tie us in knots and stop us having our own commercial and trade policy.
Yes.
Which, so any of the key, there are many moral benefits of Brexit, but the key practical benefit is the ability to set your own trade policy.
Yeah, completely.
And that would stop that in its tracks.
They had somebody on PM tonight, some chap, a business owner, some sort of production business that exports all over the world, saying, this is absolute nonsense, all this talk about this backstop, because we can trade with the world, and we do trade with the world, and it means filling out a few extra forms when we have a transition, and that's it. On talking to our transport company, that's what he said. But apart from that, it's basically the same deal. It's not that big a deal.
But have you seen also today, the EU has basically waived problems on trucks, EU trucks in the UK and UK trucks in the EU, for another 9 months post, if this is a hard deal, hard departure, or what I would call soaring out, because it's not in their interest. 80% of cross-channel trucks are EU or continental EU flagged trucks.
Yes.
And as such, it would be hammer blow to their industry and their exports if they were to make transport across the channel difficult. So if the transport across the channel is not going to be difficult, and the people at the port of Dover says it isn't, the port of Calais absolutely says it isn't, then why are they X hundred border crossings between the north and the south of Ireland going to be problematic? I can't imagine.
Yeah. Well, in Westminster this evening, for example, also they're saying that 80% of Brits disapprove of the government's negotiating strategy. A majority reject May's deal. The vast majority of Brits disapprove of the way the government have handled the Brexit negotiations, with a record high 80% of Brits telling ORB that they aren't happy. Theresa May and her advisors have been far too soft.
Approves of it.
Go on. Sorry? You met someone who approves?
I have met somebody who approves of it.
Good Lord. Who's that? Barnier?
No, somebody who works at number 10.
Yes, yeah.
But that's the only person I know who approves of it.
Quite possibly her chief of staff.
Oh, yes.
That's not her chief of staff?
No, it's not the chief of staff. However, there's plenty of other people in number 10 who privately are despairing.
Only 20% of those asked, according to this, approve of the government's approach to negotiations. That number has never been lower.
I'm amazed it's so high.
Yeah, I know. There's a 20% of madness or whatever. Absolutely incredible. But I mean, does this not stem from her rolling over paralleled talks at the very beginning? The first thing that she did when she took over the mantle, goodness knows. Actually, first of all, why did the Tories? Why did they put a Remainer in charge of such a monumental time for our country?
To be fair, it's almost not her fault she got elected leader. It's because everybody else managed to self-immolate.
Well, Gove did, didn't he? He cocked it up.
And then Boris did, and Leadsom did. Yeah. The March for Leadsom was one of the more preposterous things I've seen for a while.
Yeah. She said that she doesn't have any kids or something. Or it was all taken out of context, as I recall.
What do we want, Leadsom? When do we not want her now? No, no, please no. But the point is she Theresa May almost became PM by default, and that is who the Tories were left with after the smoke cleared. There were bodies all over the field, and there she was going, "Oh, this crown, is it mine?" So that's who we've got.
You don't think there's more to it than that?
This is old Piers now. Hey, Piers.
Given
Hello,
the way
Gawain, how are
that the Leave representatives in that campaign attacked each other, no, I don't.
Really?
She was the only.
I more conspiratorial bent than the pair of you two.
Incompetent.
Okay, now hold that thought a sec, Piers. But these parallel talks, I mean, what a riotous decision to allow the EU to just ride roughshod over the British government, over whether or not we should be having withdrawal agreement talks or withdrawal agreement and trade talks in concert. Surely, we would not have had any of this backstop issue had we been discussing trade at the same time, because it would have been sorted out in a trade document. But actually, as it is, the backstop, it is, if anything, it's a trade issue. It's, if anything, no. So she really did allow Barnier to walk all over her from the very outset. No, Gawain?
Yes, I think that is true, and that's fair. But I mean, more so than that, from day one, she should have instructed Whitehall to prepare for no deal, to make the message absolutely clear to our friends on the continent that we would be ready to go.
Yes.
Yesterday, you had Martin Selmayr boasting about the fact that he's proud of the fact that the EU's been preparing for no deal since autumn of 2017.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, another unelected technocrat.
HMG seems to be started preparing in autumn of 2018.
Yes,
it's crazy.
It is. But is that not partly the case that the civil service was politicised, particularly under the Blair administrations, and that it is very much, frankly, a moron establishment that is completely biased to the EU?
To an extent. You've got to remember that the civil service is risk-averse, change-averse, it's sclerotic, it doesn't like to rock the boat, and it, as does, I think, the PM, from her perspective, sees Brexit as not as an opportunity to be grasped, which is what the people who are voting for it expected, but as a disaster to be mitigated. And the entire negotiations have been driven by how do we mitigate the disaster of democratic politics, rather than how do we take advantage of the optimism and hope of democratic politics. And sadly, everything has been driven by that how do we mitigate this attitude. And that has been what has bedeviled the talks from day one, including not going for a no deal, not making it clear that we could do no deal, including accepting the we won't have trade talks until we've had withdrawal agreement talks, and everything that has flowed out of that. It is the council of doom rather than the council of aspiration that has driven how Whitehall has approached all of these negotiations. And I've had senior people in the Brexit department who are Remainers complain about the fact that they can't employ any Leavers because Leavers don't make it through those rounds of interviews.
Well, David Davis,
well-qualified Leavers can't get jobs in the departments.
David Davis said this, didn't he? He said that he wasn't allowed to do his job, and it was Olly Robbins doing it.
I was talking to a very senior figure within DEXU, and we had a pint and chatting and all the rest of it, and everything was fine until somebody pointed out to this individual that I was working for UKIP at that point, and she screamed that I was a racist, a fascist, and stormed off.
Really?
And if that is the attitude of somebody I've been getting on with perfectly well for the previous 10 minutes, if that is the attitude of a very senior civil servant within DEXU, what chance have we got?
Yeah, no, it's very, very sad. Let me take a few comments, and then we'll see what old Piers wants to chip in with. Sarah Boland says, The woman was a blatant Remainer, for goodness sake. Of course, she is trying to keep us in. John Middleton says that the video was freezing back then. I hope it's a bit better now, guys. Helen Lasky-Smith, Theresa May was Plan B. Cameron said that the next leader would be worse than him. Sam Phipps, don't like Leadsom. She wants to repeal the Hunting Act. Went right off her when I learnt that. And Amanda Rolofsson, the EU states have provided the government in Ankara with security and surveillance technology valued at more than 80 million euros in exchange for the protection of its borders. This included the transfer of 35.6 million euros by Brussels to the Turkish company Otokar as part of its IPA regional development program. And Lee Holland says, since we voted to leave, the establishment have been doing everything within their power to overturn our vote and ensure we stay. And Gawain, it has to be said, and I say this a lot on this show, 408 of 650 constituencies in general election terms, 62.8% voted to leave the EU.
Yeah.
Sudbury, for example, 70%. Just absolutely staggering lack of representation, no?
They think that they are wiser. They think that, and it's not something that they've done that often, but over this issue, more than almost anything else, they look at Edmund Burke's address to the people of Bristol, who basically turned to the people of Bristol and said, you elect me because you trust my intelligence and my decisions, not for me to listen to what you have to say later. This is a very famous thing from Edmund Burke. Mm-hmm. However, what is very rarely mentioned is he was turfed out at that election. MPs are very proud of and happy to quote it, to say they are independent-minded and all the rest of it. However, democracy will out, and I suspect it will again. But since June 16, the people of this country have had very little say. Mm-hmm. They took it as read that the two parties, and you were mentioning earlier Keir Starmer jumping over and rolling over his own manifesto, but they took it as read that they two parties were going to back the manifesto commitments they made about free movement, about single market, about customs union, i.e. they were going to deliver Brexit. Now, people don't like to be told what to do, and politicians more than most. Now, that, of course, there are honourable people on different sides of the House. There are decent, honourable people, without a shadow of doubt. Some who campaign for Remain, and accept the result of the vote. Yes, certainly there are a fair few of those on both sides of the House. But the sense of entitlement that drives people who feel that as they have been elected to the House of Commons, they now have a superior knowledge of how the world works than those who haven't been elected or have no desire to be elected to the House of Commons. And they do assume that
many of these people have never held down a proper job, though.
Well, this is true, and also and people on the Remain side of the argument will use if you want your heart bypass to be done, you don't get a bus driver in, do you? Fine, that's a technical skill. Politics is not a technical skill. Everybody, in their own way, has a legitimate and valid interest in politics and knowledge of how politics works and what it's about. That is why we have universal suffrage. That is the reason we give everybody the vote, because everybody's voice is equal. And in this country, we had a referendum in which the majority of those who decided to make a choice in the largest ever vote in our history, the majority of those who decided to make a choice decided to leave. That has resulted in many of those who felt the other way, who lost the vote, the Remainers, feeling that in some way it was illegitimate because the people who voted to leave were a majority were older than 50. It was illegitimate because there are questions about a couple of £100,000 here and there. It was illegitimate for all sorts, because they were uneducated, because the opinion polls and the studies have shown that the average Leave voter didn't go to university. Yeah. Well, if they're older, of course they didn't, because not that many people went to university then. It doesn't make them stupid.
They'd also invested their whole lives into the country.
Absolutely. And there is this strange contempt for experience. I don't know about you, but from my experience, grandparents and parents will move heaven and earth to ensure a better life for their children.
Yes.
They will act and work to ensure that their families are provided for and looked after. Mm. Why do people think that generation would in some way deliberately sabotage their children's future? No, it is because with a greater level of experience, they have seen what has been going on and feel that their children's future is far better guaranteed by leaving the European Union than it is by staying in the European Union. And it is an absolute disgrace to hear those on the Remain side of the argument, and I mean, senior people on the Remain side of the argument, talking about, well, it's the votes of the dead. Good Lord.
It is disgusting. I totally agree with you.
We do not hold this country in freehold. We hold it as leasehold. We have a duty to the generations to come, but also we have a duty to the generations that have passed. We're just flying through the room in our lives, and our duties extend both ways. And the problem with too many on the Remain side is that they believe that tomorrow belongs to them. History starts with them. Nothing happened before them, and therefore their perspectives, they know not where they come from, so therefore they have no clue where they're going, and wish, because of that, to hand over controls of the ship of state to people who may well be antipathetic to the interests of that ship. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me.
What is it now? 50, 53, 55 days or something like that till the end of March. Piers, mate. What's your take on where we are now? How do you feel personally as a Brit?
Get Gawain's opinion on this idea, that the idea that that there may have been an overriding philosophy in place, where, regardless of whether you have Conservative or Labour in power, yes, you have baseline politics, but the overarching agenda always the same. So say things like the Bilderberg Group were set up in 1954, private meeting between anybody worth their salt in the corporate world, the banking world, royalty, whoever you like. Mm-hmm. Our senior politicians get summoned to those meetings. We never know what gets said. Has been agenda in play that is related to this centralization of power, with the management of the global human population.
Piers, your
people
audio
that are put in power.
Your audio is awful. You keep cutting in and out. Please get a bit closer to your microphone.
I get the basic idea of what Piers is saying there. Mm-hmm. I don't share Piers's concerns to the same level. I've always looked at Bilderberg Group and things of that sort of Davos as talk shops and all the rest of it. I do understand why people who have a great deal of clout sometimes like to be able to talk to other people who have a great deal of clout to see if there are any synergies and things that work more effectively. We all learn from other people's experience, and I sort of understand that. It would be nice if there was a little bit more transparency on the decisions, but actually, if one looks at the agendas do come out, if one looks at the agendas and one looks at the decisions coming in the years or the months, years after these meetings, they're pretty. It's not hard to work out what they're doing. I've spoken to people who've been to the Bilderberg Group meetings, and they've been underimpressed by the power and the display and the accretion of power that takes place in them. I'm I'm more cock up than conspiracy, and I do think, yes, there are more. The interests of global business and global government chime together. What is it? This idea that the classic one was Philip Hammond phoning up with his Skype call with 300 leading businessmen, telling them that it's all right, don't worry, I'll make sure that we don't have a no deal.
Yes.
Mate, as Adam Smith said, you can't get a group of businessmen in a room without the conversation turning to how to screw over the country, the people. And that is essentially what you saw there, a perfect illustration of Adam Smith's concern and warning. What he is not, he's not talking to business, he's talking to corporate. He's talking to global. He's not talking to entrepreneurs. He's talking to those who like big government because it closes down competition and stops people innovating. And they are constantly fearful of new entrants to the market, of new entrants to their business field, where their profit margins would go down. Of course, mass migration is a wonderful thing for big business, because it keeps their profit margins up. It keeps the wages down.
Cheap labour.
One of the things that we've seen already out of Brexit has been, because of it has had a chilling effect on some levels of migration into the UK, and already we're seeing wages, particularly for the lowest skilled, going up as the demand for staff is starting to come across a non-oversupply of labour. This is good news for people, as the Leave campaign said it would be. And this week we've had this glorious panic in some parts of the press where they're terrified that after Brexit there may be cheap food imports.
Yeah.
God, no, please.
They're spinning it all over the place.
People will be able to afford food.
They're spinning it all over the place.
What a dreadful thing to happen. And you know what? House prices in London might drop.
Well, that would be fantastic.
My children might have a chance of buying a house.
Yeah,
or renting a house in London.
Absolutely. Christopher John George says the public and private sector should be working together to develop trade services and opportunities for British companies, especially for small to medium-sized enterprises who represent 98% of all companies in the UK, and not pandering to the interests of the City of London and the top 2%. There seems to be little vision and long-term trade strategies that will boost British trade. We need to develop and support small companies more so that they will become the big companies of the future, create jobs and generate economic development. Too much hot air and empty talk in government rather than practical solutions. Well done.
I would agree with that, except that one has to be very wary of government intervention. Government's not very good at picking winners. The best thing government can do in these circumstances is get out of the way. What was it? Ronald Reagan's classic quote, the scariest words in the English language. I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
Yeah, that's right. He did, didn't he? The gupper. Okay.
So I think whilst, yes, they should be working with SMEs. Yes, they should be encouraging. And actually, some parts of government does do this quite well. One has to be fair where fair's due. The best thing they can do is get out of the way and let people innovate and let people develop, and possibly make access to funding somewhat easier. Strip out some of the more problematic regulatory burdens. That much has been done to make life harder. So a business with 5 people is dealing with the same level of regulatory burden as a business of 500,000 or 50,000. This is one of the reasons why big business likes the EU and its regulatory machine and its factory of regulations, is because they can cope. Their compliance department is yay big, and they have to deal with the same amount of compliance as a firm of 5 people in many cases, in many fields. And that is obviously extremely problematic for those who are trying to innovate and drive and create the new wealth and create the new ideas and create the new business that can be sort of local, regional, national and international champions.
What's your take on the 29th of March? Do you think that we're going to see Brexit?
I have no idea at this point. I hope so. I do think we are moving. It is increasing. The government, that whether they can stop it, but the government would like to extend Article 50 without a shadow of doubt. More and more ministers are coming out and saying so. But what is getting also clear is that as we get closer to the date, and as the situation of a no-deal Brexit becomes more likely, more people are writing about it and talking about it, and people are getting the public are getting less frightened of it.
Yes, that's right.
When you have people, the government's contingency plans saying they're going to evacuate the royal family from London, then everybody sits there and goes, "Oh, come off it." Yeah. And if you're saying, "Oh, come off it" about that, you then look down the rest of the list. There won't be burials in Kent. There won't be bus drivers is the latest one. There won't be. We're going to have a shortage of Viennetta and people are just looking at it going.
Do you think?
Really?
Do you think
Really?
they're over egging the cake, or do you think they're being effective somewhere?
I think they are becoming less and less effective. When somebody was on Sky talking about the fact that the effect of a no-deal Brexit would be worse than a major European war, and that was a week ago.
Right.
I did wonder, how are they going to top that? How are they going to come up with something that's more ridiculous than Brexit's going to be worse than have a worse impact than a major European war?
Yeah.
And then they came up with evacuating the royal family. And said, okay, who knows what they're going to come up with next? Maybe the mantle of the earth will split and the entirety of the UK will fall into the magma. I don't know. It's just getting silly. And though there may be, and there will be disruptions, come on, you change the status quo,
sure,
there will be disruption.
Yep.
We know that.
Yeah.
But
I think people knew that when they voted, in the referendum. Pretty sure we did.
However, the point I'm making is that whilst we understand that there will be some disruption, just like before the referendum, we were told about the punishment budget and 500,000 would lose their jobs and it didn't happen. Now we look at these headlines and look at these stories and start to disbelieve even the sensible stuff.
Yes.
That there will be some problem. People are generally, you talk to people in the pub, they'll go, "This is just ridiculous. I don't believe a word they're saying." Well, actually, some things there will be difficulties. There will be some problems. Of course there will. If you don't change 40 years of integration overnight without there being some things. But in a short to medium term, we will come out happier, freer, and more economically viable than we are today.
Piers, go on, mate. Please speak close to your microphone, Piers, because it was cutting out before.
I am right.
Good man.
Next to it. I'm
don't want to see that
hands, let's assume they're going to delay it on the 29th of March. A general election. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to see a radical change in the Commons for UKIP and the new Brexit Party?
That's what we're coming to. And that is the point, isn't it? Because what we surely have seen here, Gawain, is this huge disparity between the wishes of the British people and their so-called elected representatives, these public servants, allegedly, who are going against their wishes. Is there not going to be a backlash? Is this not an opportunity for many, many Brits to come out, even more than, say, voted for UKIP the last general election bar one? What was it, about 4 million voted for UKIP then? 3.8 million or something. More than voted for the SNP, I think. So potentially, if it was PR, the UKIP would have a lot of seats there now.
Would have had 80.
80, really?
Under those terms.
Really?
And as such, we wouldn't have been wiped out to the same extent as we were last year.
Is the opportunity, though, to, if you like, correct the Commons with more and more people waking up to, if you like, the self-interest in Lib, Lab, Con, and maybe voting for other parties? But is this opportunity not being scuttled by your old friend, Nigel Farage? Now, I know you're head of press at UKIP for what must have seemed like an eternity for you. 12 years or so, was it?
I was a press officer for 14.
14.
Blimey.
So
I worked both in Brussels
all.
and in the UK. In 2009, I was head of print, and at some point between then and now, I became head of media.
Now,
director of comms. But
I know you've quit UKIP now. Actually, handed it, torn up your membership card because
I just didn't. I didn't so much as quit. I just I didn't repay, and I didn't make a big song and dance about it because there are decent people there still, and I still help out as much as I can in ways that I can with people that I like.
Well, that's terrific. And so you're perfectly positioned to answer. Is the Brexit Party not poised to spoil whatever inroads that UKIP might otherwise have been able to make at the next general election, which could be quite soon?
No, I disagree. I really do disagree with that. I think the UKIP has had and it's been written about in quite some depth, but UKIP has had a very significant change in its over the last 2 years in its makeup and in its direction. That, for the best will of the world, may increase its membership base, but I fear will not significantly increase its voter base, much from the most recent election. And there are various reasons for that. I think it is backing itself into a corner, but I suspect it will increase its membership base. And once your membership base is increasing, it makes you feel good. There is a small, but I would think noticeable increase in UKIP's vote share, according to the polls. It's up to 6-7% in some polls at present, up from the 3-4% it was when Mr. Batten took over. That is absolutely true. But I would suggest to you that is not because of the direction that Jawed is taking the party, but more because of a frustration with the others. Most people have never heard of Gerard. Most people have never heard of Mr. Robinson. Most people have heard very little. But what they do know is UKIP is opposed to being members of the EU, and it will pick up some votes on that level. But getting beyond that, maybe 10%, maybe tops 15%, is going to be very difficult and extremely. And you've got to remember, the other parties have more funds, despite the news we're hearing about their membership dropping, and therefore some funds dropping. They have far more funds. They have access to the media, far greater access to the media. They have their cheerleaders in the media, and currently UKIP have none. Now they have some on social media. They have some access to things of that sort. This is true, but it is not as electorally significant, I would suggest. And whilst we still have first past the post for a general election, then I think that is it will plateau at a certain level. Now you ask about what FARAGE is up to.
Well, I want to come on to
Brexit
that. I want to come on to that. But whilst you're on that vein, I've got a question that is nagging me, because it seems to me that UKIP or a UKIP-style party only needs a clutch of seats to be in the running as a possible coalition partner to a future Conservative
I would agree. But to get a clutch of seats, you need to get between 35 and 40% in specific places under the first past the post system. The current UKIP party, good Lord, even when we were getting just under 4 million in the election, we missed that. We managed to get one seat, and that was Clacton. We missed out on others. The tactics of particularly the Tory party were frankly very effective. I saw our opinion poll drop by 3% of the last 2 weeks during that election because of the impacts of what the Tories were up to by threatening a Sturgeon Miliband government, which was significant enough to scare people rigid. Now, if UKIP are hoping to pick up Tory votes, frankly, all the Tory party have to do is post a photograph of Jeremy Corbyn to anybody who's considering it.
Piers, what do you have to say about that?
Will have an unbelievably deadening effect on people who may be minded to vote for UKIP. I don't approve of it, but I fear that to be the case.
What do you say to that, Piers?
I'm not going to say much because my microphone, it's echoing. So it's quite difficult for me to concentrate on what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
I just, in the remaining time, in minutes or so, I mean, we're getting some really from Gawain here. I really like to hear about the Brexit Party, FARAGE's motivations.
Yeah, quite right.
Does he have 200 candidates realistically lined up? You know, what kind of an impact do you genuinely feel he can make? I think the general public are deeply despondent about liblab.com.
Yeah, you're right.
There's a bunch of duplicitous liars. Mr. I think is one of the greatest liars of this decade. You know, what kind of effect can Nigel have? I like Nigel very much, and I'd like to see him as.
Okay.
I think.
Dwayne.
Okay.
Gawain.
If the other week, Yvette Cooper's amendment had gone through and Article 50 was postponed to December, then there would have been a European election. By today, the Brexit Party would have exploded, basically. You would probably have had an entire European parliamentary list already in place, and donors would be there lined up and donating. That is, I'm certain of. However, the Cooper Amendment fell.
Yes.
And if we are not to have a European election, which of course, as we know, is under PR and therefore does allow for parties like that to grow, as they have in France and other places where parties have come out of nowhere, under PR that can happen. Under first past the post, if it's a general election, any party is going to be hard pushed to break through, partially because one of the things you need in order to get elected, and it's time and time again, you just look at the history of it, you look at the studies of it, you look at everything. If you don't have a bunch of local councillors, and the Greens are a classic example of this in Brighton, if you don't have a bunch of local councillors, the chance of actually breaking through and getting a Westminster seat is very, very slim indeed. And that is frustrating and annoying, but it is the way that our politics works. So in the London Assembly elections, yes, there are chances. In Wales, there are chances, and UKIP did well in Wales. And in the European elections, of course, UKIP won. However, under first past the post, the mountain is very high to climb, and you've got to work very hard locally to make that happen. And with the best will in the world, I don't see UKIP or any party being able to produce that hard work in the short period of time to make the difference locally, to build upon that, and therefore get seats in a future general election. And we've got local elections coming up, 6 weeks after the 29th of March. This is a perfect opportunity for UKIP to flex his muscles, because we've proven in the past that the party can win local council seats. And the chaos of, if the government delays at the end of March, the next electoral test is a local council test. However, whilst work is being done to get candidates and things of this sort for those elections, that should have been done a year ago, and it wasn't.
So you don't see a problem in terms of filling seats for this new party, the Brexit Party. Do you think you might be involved with it, or is that something you don't know yet, or wouldn't say?
I don't know. I have had plenty of people come to me from if there's going to be a European election, I think you will find very much a coupon election in which people are standing for a specific political point that may not agree on social policy, may not agree on trade policy, may not agree on this, that, the other, but do agree that the referendum should be honoured. Now, in those circumstances, I could see that UKIP, as it is currently UKIP, as it is currently under Gerard, with its current focus, would still be picking up between 10 and 15 seats, is my conviction, because of the brand recognition of the name. I think the Tories will have a very hard time. Labour will find it difficult. You may see one or two more Liberals turning up and one or two more Greens turn up. But I do think that a Farage-led party... I've had people from the Green Party come to me and say, can I get on a list if it is that sort of coupon election? You will have a very broadly based people who are formerly Labour, Tory, UKIP, Green, good people, able people, coming forward and putting their names forward for a European election, just to turn that into a possible second referendum, to make a very clear point that we voted to leave. As leave means leave said, tell them again. I do see that as a significant possibility. And I think in those circumstances, I suspect a Farage-associated, Farage-led party of that sort could well win a European election.
Can you see cooperation between the Brexit Party and, for example, the DVP, maybe the Greens, the Libertarian Party?
Some of them, yeah.
You do think because that wouldn't happen by the sounds of it with UKIP?
I think because UKIP would be basically ploughing its own furrow, and has made it very clear it wants to. Much of UKIP's media output, not all of it, of course, but some of it has been laughing at some of these smaller parties that are set up, the SDPs and the things of that sort. There seems to be quite a lot of jocular ha ha ha. They're shooting down, not shooting up, to a certain extent in those circumstances, which is not necessarily the best way forward. There's been a lot of splitting, as we know, on the Eurosceptic side, and
there has.
I don't think it's going to have a major difference. I don't think there are that many members in the DVP. I don't think the SDP has got that many members. I don't think the Libertarian Party has got that many members. I don't think they're going to have significant electoral impact of any sort at all.
Yes.
To be frank, having worked with UKIP for such a long time, having seen and known people who were there from the start, I know how hard it is to set up a national political party. It's bloody hard. Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen just because you want it to happen. It is serious, serious hard work. And I don't see any of these parties being able to do that. However, as I say, for a European election, it's slightly different. You don't need that local activist base. You don't need that sort of in-depth support in any specific constituency. You need a broad ability to reach out to people. And with people like Farage leading it, you have easy access to the media in a way that the current UKIP has much, much more difficulty doing. The sort of people that will be representing and would be representing a Brexit party would be much more amenable to the media classes. And so therefore there would be a great deal of interest in it. There'd be a great deal of fear from the other parties. And I suspect in those circumstances you would see a new Brexit party in like En Marche in France with Macron coming through very strong through the middle.
In fairness to Gerard Batten, is he not right to be extending an olive branch, to be a hand to Tommy Robinson, not so much because of Tommy Robinson, but because of the number of people that Tommy Robinson represents who do not feel that they have been represented? And I don't think they have been represented, actually, for decades.
It is interesting. When we were doing when UKIP was at its strongest and its best, it actually did represent that a significant part of that constituency. Mm-hmm. Not all of it, not by a long chalk, but a significant part of it. I think that we had our rules. I think whilst I don't agree fully with Mr. Robinson, I don't think he is a monster. I am concerned about some of the people that come with him. And I am concerned that before we've won the main game, the direction that the party has taken is why I left it or let my membership slide. I was very concerned that the focus has changed to something that personally I think is beyond my conception of what is right and decent and good. I'm a Democrat. And as such, we are where we are in the population sense. We are where we are in a cultural sense, and you can't backdate that. You just can't. Now, obviously, there are issues to do with political radical Islam, and UKIP has for many years been one of the few people who talked about that. But the Tommy Robinson approach broadens that to not just the politically radical Islam, but to a far broader aspect of Muslims. And I know there's denials that they do, but there's also evidence that that approach towards the broad mass of that religion is beyond what I can cope with.
Okay, let's take a few comments. Michelle Reed, these things are a symptom of a cause of EU membership. Kazi Mack, France opened my eyes when they started protesting. Debbie Shaw, oh yes, I am one of those right-wing knuckle dusters, aren't I? A state-paid carer for 34 years. Karen Ormez, Tommy helped Daisy raise money for a new wheelchair. Karen Orms, without live feeds from Tommy and Tracy and others, we would not have known anything was wrong in our towns and cities. Sarah Boland, yes, it's bloody scary. Expanding the EU to include even Algeria. For goodness sake, Victoria West, 40 years of not being listened to. Debbie Shaw, a golden link is... The thing is, what I'm hearing, Gawain, is that people don't really... most of the people that I come across, obviously this isn't across the board, but I would say that the majority of the people that I interact with on Facebook and wherever else and on this show, they don't really trust Nigel Farage anymore.
There's certainly some, absolutely.
A couple of the reasons for that are some of the things that he doesn't talk about. He does seem to have gone a little bit soft on the Islamist issue. For example, that I think it was Jane Champion called the Muslim problem or what have you. Maybe she didn't use quite the right wording, but we do seem to have a problem with giving away a large swathes of our culture. So, for example, Sharia law is creeping into the UK by the back door with apparently dozens, if not 100 courts operating around the country, all that kind of stuff. Nigel doesn't seem to talk about this. That's on that side of things, but more to do.
There's absolutely. You say he doesn't talk about it. Funnily enough, we spent quite a long time. We were talking about these things, slightly different language. We certainly were talking about them. However,
he doesn't on LBC.
No, not particularly. But I would suggest that his approach has always been about getting the UK out of the EU. As a small political party, how many fronts do you want to open?
We
talked about mass migration.
Yes.
And broke open that as an issue.
Yes.
Now, I would suggest that, and he was very strong on
but that was
after
a while
Merkel
ago,
opened the doors, pointing out the dangers of radical jihadists coming through.
Yes.
In those large numbers of people coming out of Turkey and the Middle East and Africa. He was very strong on issues such as that and has spoken about that on his LBC show and so on and so forth. So he is focused on the radical end, absolutely, and I think that's right and proper. Why is he in politics? It's not to fight Islam. He's in politics because he wants the UK to get out of the European Union.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
That's
and I was
the issue.
I was going to come on to yes, quite right. And I was going to come on to that, Gawain, and ask because, for example, he doesn't talk about the treachery that I don't think he ever has about the treachery that happened under the Heath government that took us into the EEC with, for example, locking away the FCO 301048, which basically said everything that is coming to pass in terms of giving away our sovereignty. He doesn't seem to talk about that.
In the early days, he certainly did.
Mm-hmm.
And he did quite a lot.
Right.
However, it got nowhere. It got absolutely nowhere. UKIP appealed to a bunch of academics and some rather esoteric types. And he decided that if we wanted to make a difference, we had to be a little bit more clever than that. And so therefore, when the EU opened, or the UK opened its borders to the EU enlargement countries, we were able to tie the issue of mass migration, the impact on social services, the impact on this, that, and the other, to our membership of the EU. And we were able to break through and bring that subject up as a reasonable and lucid and non-racist way of dealing and making people understand the impact of our membership of the EU on their daily lives. That was vital to things. We did talk about, and he did talk about the behaviour of Heath, but frankly, we're talking a very, very tiny minority. UKIP was, as he used to say, a very niche interest in those days. That doesn't make it wrong. It was just niche. What we were able to do is turn what was a niche interest into a movement that grew so much so that we won the referendum. Now, we didn't win it on our own, but we won the referendum. We turned a niche interest, leave the EU, into the majority decision of the people of this country. That was the purpose of the exercise. It wasn't to fight a culture war. That was not the purpose of the exercise. Now, there are those within UKIP, and there were always those within UKIP who were minded to do so. And I think those people now have got the wind in their sails within UKIP. Fine. That's their game. It's not mine. I won't denounce them. It's just not for me.
You don't think that Nigel has been placed under some sort of duress to toe the line a little bit? You would
no chance.
Okay, all right. And that because there was quite a bit of menacing that was going on.
Yes, but he's not the sort of person that bows down to that sort of rubbish.
No, absolutely. Quite remarkable. He didn't.
No, not in the slightest. He just feels that his focus has been and must remain on the main game of getting us out of the EU. We're not out yet, despite the fact that we won that referendum, and we have to continue fighting that, and that's what he's focused on. And he's been well aware of some of the issues that Gerard brings up, and he is sympathetic to certainly some of them. And you just have to look at what he said, and often what people have said about him. However, that's not his focus, and fine, that's something for somebody else. There's no reason why it should be his focus, particularly since we haven't got out of the EU yet.
Yeah, no, sure, fair play. One final
question.
Go on, Piers.
Yeah, excuse my ignorance, but if you don't have councillors representing MPs in certain constituents, does that mean you can't stand as a candidate?
No. It just means that you don't have the base you require to get 35% of the constituency to come out and vote for you.
Get it, but I think that people are so frustrated and angry now. We may see some.
I think
some remarkable.
You've got to remember that other parties have machines. One and two, even in these febrile times, people still want to trust and believe the bigger parties. They do. They really do. Now they feel very disappointed, but they still want to do so. And it is statistically the case that you need councillors, not legally. Evidence. As we have seen, now we all know that all evidence can be changed, that the black swan effect, something weird can happen. Absolutely true. But the sheer mountain you have to climb against a system that is stacked against you, and I think what happened in Thanet is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
The fact is the Tories outspend over the legal limit by a vast amount to stop FARAGE getting elected to Westminster. And it worked. What do they get? Slap wrist.
If only the media concentrated on that story as much as they do about maybe a few quid astray on
happened. In the end, what happened? The judgment was made, and naughty woman, slap wrist. Yeah. Here's a fine. Yeah. And what's more, the Brexit Party then did a whip round to pay her fine.
Yes.
What message does that send out to big parties overspending illegally to try and crush small ones, incomers?
Gawain, you know Nigel quite well, and I'm guessing that you know Gerard Batten fairly well, very well as well, very well, and in both cases. And look, I mean, there's so many of us that are, as Piers just said, are so very concerned now with what we're seeing or what we're not seeing. and beginning to be a little bit beside ourselves with worry. It's actually a very nasty psychological process we've been put through off the back of that referendum and the duplicity of, in my opinion, this Prime Minister. But my question to you here is, I understand that Nigel and Gerard don't exactly get on. Can they not put that behind them for the sake of the country? Because between them, I would have thought they could be an incredible force.
I'm not the only person who's tried to make that happen. Plenty of people have tried to make that happen. They are at such poles apart. And much as one tried, in the end, that's one of the reasons I gave up. I couldn't make that happen. So it's the simple answer. It's not going to happen.
Hypothetically,
Go on, Piers.
do really well in a general election, and the Brexit Party do really well in a general election.
Well, as I say, I think it's unlikely that a general election is a very different beast to a European election. The Brexit Party would be perfectly placed to pick up big in the European election. Whether it can do the same, well, maybe. Let's see. As I say, whilst you look at you look with experience, you look at precedent. Wasn't it John Bercow who said we live now in a precedentless world? Theresa May should have resigned when she didn't do too well in her leadership thing. Corbyn doesn't have the support of 2/3 of his own backbenchers. The biggest defeat of a government in history. That woman who's not resigned her seat because she's been sent to jail. We live in a precedent-free world. So me looking at precedent about an election result may be a completely pointless exercise.
Okay, I'm going to finish off this show with something on a slightly lighter note, because to be honest with you, Gawain, I'm a bit depressed now. I'm a bit depressed.
Sorry.
But no, God bless you, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. Look, this is in Guido, yeah. This is Jacob Rees-Mogg's Brexit song, and I just thought it would be nice to end up the show on something like that.
She came from Greece, she had a first phone knowledge. I had Spain, I went to college. That's when she laughed at me. I told her that my dad was dead, and how I'll profit if the pound imploded. And then she cried, because her visa had expired. And I said, I want to leave the common market. I want to leave the customs union too. Want to leave the common market. Want to keep out foreign people like you. But I didn't understand why she refused to shake my hand. We let the people have their say, then we convince them not to stay. So them falsehoods on.
I want to say a big cheers to Gawain Towler for popping in tonight on the Daily Brexit. Thank you very much indeed, Gawain. Good to get to know you a bit, sir.
You too.
And to all Piers too. Piers Garnham, God bless you. But for crying out loud, sort out your microphone, mate.
We can build the wall. I want to leave the common market. I want to leave the customs union too. Want to leave the common market. Want to watch it all slide out of view and leave the whole economy screwed. Cause I got nothing else to do. Alright.
Right, that's it. God bless you. See you tomorrow. This. Oh. Yep, Gawain Towler. Thank you very much indeed. And I'll try and get him back on the show to keep us informed with what's going on with the Brexit Party, because he's kind of got the inside scoop there, I understand. And big cheers to you, Piers, mate, because it was Piers who put me in touch with Gawain, actually. So his microphone was dreadful tonight, wasn't it? It's a shame, because he occasionally says some sensible things. And thanks to everybody in the comments. Thank you. Tomorrow we got Robin Horsley here. Robin Horsley, who was on last Wednesday and who now is our Bruges Group stringer. God bless him. Yeah, tomorrow talking about disinfo. Yeah, the media, the way they're spinning this whole thing. Yeah, that's tomorrow at 7. See you then. This has been the Daily Brexit. I'm Olly Connelly. Here's to us and bugger plutocracy, yeah?